Welcome to a CNBC Africa panel special where we're going to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on manufacturing industries. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused huge disruptions in supply chains due to a tighter border control and movement restrictions. So, to what extent have manufacturers been affected and how are they coping? On the panel today, we are joined by Albert Sigei, the CEO of CIMERWA PPC here in Rwanda, and Alphonse Kwizera, the Assistant Executive Director of the Rwanda Association of Manufacturers. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. I want to start with you, Albert. CIMERWA PPC, a Rwanda-based cement manufacturing industry. You're even about to cross-list on the Rwanda Stock Exchange, but now COVID-19 affected those plans and already has affected some of your supply chains. How have you been dealing with the situation?
Indeed, it's been a very special moment the world over, and our supply chains have been disrupted, and we had to in terms of handling the emergency at the outset, and then thereafter taking some actions that were in the face of depressed cash flows. Take some immediate actions to ensure the continuity or the survival of the business. So we are now in the phase where we're just coming out of that phase of the survival with the lockdown eased in Rwanda, and things starting to pick up, activity beginning to pick up a little bit. So some light at the end of the tunnel, but by no means are we out of the situation. So we continue to watch it and monitor and collaborate very closely with various stakeholders.
I want to bring Alphonse into the conversation. Alphonse, how are manufacturers, some of your members, dealing and coping during this time?
During this time, there are some sectors in which during the lockdown that were still operational, like the sector in food processing, packaging. Those sectors continue operating but on with minimum employees, but some sectors find a way to shift from working from home because they can access the usual area of work. So now that we found that the business is coming again to work as usual, that all the industries are now starting to go back to work, and we believe that, as Albert was saying, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Very optimistic view there, Albert. But with the disruptions in value chains, there's also a disruption in your cash flow, and especially for many of the members. Some of them are saying we need, bailouts because we've lost more than 60, 70, 80% of our revenue. Now, as a body, are you lobbying for this, for a form of bailout from government to keep many of the companies afloat?
Yeah, thank you. Once again, yes, indeed, it has been a very interesting experience for all of us in the industry, in the government, and as a society overall. I would characterize the whole COVID situation in 4 phases, just to try to answer your question in this manner. In the first phase, people were riddled with unexpected shock and confusion. As businesses went from full operations one day to a total shutdown the next day, meaning cash flows literally went to zero the next day. So at that point, the priority was to ensure invoke crisis response structures, assure the safety and health of our labor force and partners, and by, for example, rolling out very rapidly anti-COVID measures, including physical measures and other measures such as awareness. The immediate challenge in the second phase, I would characterize this phase as the survival phase, which is probably more pertinent to the question that you've asked. And in this phase, we had to, first and foremost, before considering what others can do for us from the outside, manufacturers had to look at what are the things that were within their control in that immediate aftermath. So this involved some tough decisions measures including surgical cost cuts and, just keeping expenditure to the bare minimum, really essential. And our business and others, worked hard in these circumstances to make sure that the implications were minimal to employees and so on. At this phase, we had to engage our partners, not just the lenders. Talk to the lenders, of course, but various manufacturers were engaging the lenders, and we also engaged our partners, customers, suppliers, because we did realize, in fact, that the best medicine or the best way to increase our chances of success was to act collectively. So in addition to talking to the lenders, we engaged various stakeholders, including government and associations that represent the industry, in order to jointly align on measures. So, I think it was an extremely useful and a collaborative effort, making sure that the different parts of the jigsaw are fitting well. So the government gave guidelines to the banks in terms of what needed to be, what they could do in these special circumstances, including a special dispensation for them to give moratoriums on interest and payments of principal and so on and so forth. So yes, it was a very collaborative effort involving stakeholders, government, industry players, and our partners in the whole supply chain, suppliers, customers, and lenders. And I have to say, in the case of Rwanda, it's been quite refreshing to have this kind of joint effort showing some fruits. It's still, as I said, not completely solved, because COVID itself is a fluid and evolving situation. And we'll see what the next phase holds for us. But we soldiering on as industry and as a company.
Alphonse, how can the companies behave? How are you working with the government, and what are your expectations from the government?
When this pandemic started, now we've been working with the government closely to see what can be done after the pandemic. So now that's why we're still trying to see the impact, because it is we have both the specific impact COVID-19 we have on the manufacturing community, but we're still working with the government to find out and identify some key measures which can be best to the manufacturing industry. Right now, the government has agreed that for the taxes, they are going to give some incentives in order to help the companies stay afloat, because we know that companies have faced the cash flow challenge, and the government really understands, and we are really engaging the government, and the government is understanding clearly and very supportive.
Albert, what's the most important part of staying afloat? Is it just to survive, or is it to keep also the production in the process? And if whatever that part is, what's CIMERWA's approach in that regard?
Yes. Now, as I said, the first phase was around handling the emergency and the crisis. In the second phase, it was around survival, keeping afloat. And I have to say, this phase was quick decisions of a relatively short period of time. So very, very intense activity with various partners. So in this phase, you had to really, all businesses, and I believe it's not just CIMERWA, it was all manufacturing and other sectors, you really had to look at your statements, beginning with the top line, to say, okay, we don't have the top line. There's no cash coming in. How can we stay afloat, knowing that we need to buy time, until the situation improves somewhat, and especially when we were in a complete lockdown. So at that phase, the first decision was largely internal, and also which involves certain our partners. Now, after that, which was, making sure that, you buy 30 days, 45 days for certain the engagements with the partners to materialize. If for companies that have debts, it doesn't take 1 week to have a solution with the banks. You have to discuss for maybe 1-2 weeks, and then you have a solution. Then all sorts of approvals come in. A lot of companies were buying, that 30 days, 45 days, and once you manage to go through that phase by chasing up your collections, which was also not easy because the same customers had the same issues you have, by eliminating, minimizing costs. Once you cross that and you sort of manage to come through that initial period, the next phase is what I would call more trying to stabilize things, or stabilization phase. And in this phase, a lot of us are finding ourselves doing this when there's some small, let's say, opening of activity, meaning some cash coming in, but again, very limited because, there's still a lot of situation conditions that were attached to any activity, maybe just projects approved and so on. So in this phase, we took the chance, having dealt with the first emergency, to really look hard at ourselves in the mirror. And in this phase, you sort of do some introspection to assess ourselves in terms of, in a rather broad manner. And I believe it was happening not just for companies, but also individuals, saying, with this very unique experience, what truly are my shortcomings or my strengths? And, and how can we move past these as a business or as individuals, and not just for the COVID period, but beyond that. So this has also been very interesting because we've dug deep as businesses, manufacturers and elsewhere, and discovered that, perhaps there are some things that we either took for granted or that we really didn't know about ourselves, including simple things like working from home, and maximizing the use of technology, or innovating in the part of the supply chain. So we've implemented quite a lot of that, and some of these things are going to have a lasting impact on the business. So we are in this just emerging from this phase, and starting to accept what we call the new normal, what many people have referred to as the new normal, and we are just at the beginning of this. And our workforce and business continues to adapt as we learn more and more about the COVID situation. It's dawning on us that it will be with us for a while, and we have decided that it's not the time to feel defeated. On the contrary, we must soldier on and forge new opportunities and innovations by adapting. And in fact, in this regard, CIMERWA has just launched a new product in the market and renamed our existing portfolio in line with our plans for the year.
Albert, let me just stay with you there. Do your expectations change in regards to what you set out to accomplish for the rest of the year financially on the revenue books? If we just remember that CIMERWA only started making profits in the last quarter of last year, does this change going into the rest of 2020?
I will talk generally because I believe this situation is not just for CIMERWA. So naturally, yes, of course, the situation had a dent on companies everywhere, manufacturing sector, and it's just hospitality and so on and so forth. The extent is what is different. But for the whole month of April, towards the end of March, beginning towards the end of March, since the lockdown was implemented, there was no cash flow for a lot of companies. So naturally, the turnover expectations for most companies in that particular period was way off the mark because nobody knew COVID was coming. Second point is that COVID is a new phenomenon. It's evolving. We keep learning something new about it every 2 weeks. So in the initial period, we make a forecast, and then in the 2 weeks into the COVID period, we have another forecast, and so what I can say is this year will be, of course, for most businesses, it's going to be very unique and special with the GDPs coming down. I think one would naturally expect that the operations or activities in the various sectors, manufacturing and ourselves included, will be somewhat affected by that as priorities go to healthcare and so on and so forth. However, having said that, our construction sector occupies a very important place in society. Of course, first is the health and safety. The hospitals and so on, those take first place. But the construction sector also occupies a very important place because we're building, we're helping to contribute to the implementation of important critical infrastructure like hospitals, like schools, bridges, and so on and so forth. So we do expect that we should be able to gain traction, and hopefully that the situation continues to improve as we are seeing. We post the lifting of the lockdown on the 4th of March with some conditions. We have seen some improvement in activity in the month of May for all the industries and ourselves included. Yes, but we could definitely continue keeping an eye and focusing intensely on the health and safety of our employees, because that is the first priority, even during this period. Because, as I said, it's a learning process.
Alphonse, just before we go into a quick short break, what's the mood like in terms of expectations for members of your association?
For the members of our association, you find that the mood now, they are optimistic because that things are now back to normal compared to the month of April and the end of the month of March, in which we were in lockdown. But now that people are coming to work, people are optimistic, despite that the movement is not as it used to be, and also find that not all the employees have come to work, but they believe that in the coming weeks, things will go back to normal. So we find that industries are optimistic, and you find that the other sectors in which you find that, like in the construction sector, not many people are now constructing, but they believe that after this pandemic is over, the things will come back to normal. And if we look into other sectors, like in the food sector, you find that industries, they are working well, because even for those industries were working during even the pandemic, even though they were working with the limited employees, but they are now working. We find that if you compare from the previous during the lockdown and this week, you find that industries are optimistic if they compare to the previous month.
You are watching a CNBC panel special looking at the impact of COVID-19 on the manufacturing business. Now, after the break, we'll look at access to labor, capital goods, raw materials, and what could the opportunity be in for the manufacturing businesses regarding the current COVID-19 pandemic situation the world and global economies are facing. Keep it CNBC Africa. Welcome back to CNBC Africa. We are having a panel special on the impact of COVID-19 on the manufacturing sector. And on our panel today, we have Albert Sigei, the CEO of CIMERWA PPC, and Alphonse Kwizera, the Assistant Executive Director at the Rwanda Association of Manufacturers. Now, quickly to look at potential opportunities in COVID-19. They say you can never let a good crisis go to waste. I want to start with you, Albert, right there. What are the opportunities in this pandemic?
Like you've said, this sad event has also brought some opportunity with it. And there are a number of ways which we have, through the process of digging deep and introspection, which was, part of this journey so far of COVID. We have had to, a lot of businesses have discovered that, they can adapt in order to survive. And they've adapted in ways that they never imagined possible in their minds at the beginning. Yeah, so, just the aspect of adapting quickly and reacting very quickly, has been quite an important lesson. Number two is the use of technology, or the exploitation of technology. On the second day after the lockdown, a lot of us had to very quickly figure out how to keep the engagements, the meetings, and so on and so forth going, because business has to go on. So we had to look at things like digital platforms and make more intensive of teleconferencing, and how to hold big and small meetings with as many as 30 people, through which initially used to be done by physical means. And and in a way we have actually discovered that some of these are more efficient than the way we used to handle things before. Around technology also is just the intense interrogation and intense usage of e-commerce and digital. And we've seen very good examples in not only the hospitality sector through takeaways and so on, but even in our own industry, because there's many ways that we interact with our partners through digital means. But it was also a wake-up call to say perhaps some of these areas that involve e-commerce and digital need to be much more entrenched into our day-to-day. So this is the other, big opportunity that through this pandemic we are having to look into more closely. The third part is just a simple innovation. Looking at the disruptions in the supply chains, particularly for those of us who we are a made in Rwanda player, but we've got certain components of our supply chain that come from other countries. And because of disruption of that, we'd start to really ask ourselves, how can we make even more of our component local? And through that, calls for innovation. And I'm talking in our process things like alternative fuel substitution and the like. So in short, COVID has acted as a critical catalyst, and quite an interesting one at that, on areas around innovation and exploitation of technology in our supply chain and processes.
Alphonse, as your parting shots, what are the opportunities that some of your members can see or some other manufacturers can tap into regarding the current situation?
With the current situation, some manufacturers has some opportunities, mostly if we look into the textile industry. Before, the textile industry weren't more accustomed into making face masks, but you find that now the textile industries are shifting to making face masks. That was an opportunity for them, because they see that there is a demand for the face mask. They made face mask. And another opportunity we saw it is into R&D. We have a school here, it's a university, in which now they managed to make ventilator. Before, no one has invested into making ventilators. But to this crisis, the R&D is moving forward, because there's some challenges which are happening. We didn't know that we need this kind of things. And now we found that mostly another opportunities came into the e-commerce mostly, because now people were staying at home, they have to order everything online, or you just go and they bring it to you. So we find that the e-commerce industry just have an uplift, which put them forward in some industries. With the rise of the e-commerce, they tap into that opportunity. So they began selling using e-commerce. We were going to the shop, but just calling and they bring it to you.
Albert, before you leave us, as your parting shots, what are the lessons that a company like CIMERWA PPC takes forward from this pandemic?
Thank you. I'm sure there's a long list, but I will summarize a few. The first one, as I said earlier on, is adapting is critical. Is critical for survival and also for sustainability. The other lesson is that a collective approach to crisis increases our chances of success. Collective internally, but also externally when you with various stakeholders out there. So as a team, we do better. And innovation is crucial for sustainability. It has prompted a lot of us to get past our boundaries and think out of the box. The other lesson that I think is critical is we need to be well prepared to respond to crisis. So as it is now, even as we think about how to navigate the COVID one, we should be thinking about what if the next one came. So we must pick lessons. And then just the other one is just the power of humanity. And we saw great examples within my own company of colleagues supporting each other, and us as colleagues and as a company, going out to support the community. Yes, and this is these are the lessons. So basically, I would say, let us pick the lessons, soldier on, and get on with life. We will make it.
Thank you very much for your time there. Albert Sigei, the CEO of CIMERWA PPC here in Rwanda, and Alphonse Kwizera, the Assistant Executive Director of the Rwanda Association of Manufacturers. We're talking about the impact of COVID-19 on manufacturing business. Now, do you want to be part of this conversation or have any remarks? You can tweet us at CNBC Africa or tweet me directly at The Real Kwizera to be part of the conversation. Have a great day.